My voyage started as someone who was an American making work about America, and then traveling the world because that work was being seen worldwide. How is it possible for a black American artist to go through the world trying to capture on some small level the echo of different cultural influences from one society to the next? That's what the world stage is about. The work that I'm doing in this project is about playing with art history, playing with images of power, drawing that connection between classic European painting and Jamaica. What is its history in painting? Who are the people who have populated British portraiture? And how can you draw a line of connection between Great Britain and its former colonial powers? I did a research trip in the United Kingdom to go through the history and to see what paintings hang in the museums of its walls. And in particular, I saw works that had a direct relationship to the Caribbean. I love the history of art. I love looking at these beautiful images, but I also recognize that there's something quite sinister about their past. High portrait making points back to the history of art, and in that history, art has always had a very cozy relationship with the state and with the church. Many of the portraits were done of men and women of power who had actually gained their wealth in the Caribbean and returned to the United Kingdom to have these works commissioned. So in a sense, they can be seen as picturing a state of completion, a state of actually going out into the world and returning. In this body of work, I wanted to round that return and have it go back to Jamaica so that that circle is completed with the men and women who populate the island in the 21st century. Jamaica occupies a space that stands in between African American culture and Caribbean culture. From the taste of the food to the rhythm in the streets and the music, there is a type of double narrative that exists at once in the streets and in the faces of everyone that you meet there. Art has always had a social dimension. Is art political? Of course it is. As a child, I grew up going to museums and not seeing images of black and brown people in the great museums in America. And as I began studying art, I was fascinated with the history of portrait painting, with the trappings of wealth and power. The history of documenting black and brown communities in this world is an embarrassing one in which many of the prejudices and fears of a dominant society are pictured much more than the realities in the streets. And I think it's important in my work to point in a very real way to the possibilities for change. Many of the people in my paintings come from economically depressed and underserved communities. And I think it's important for me to be able to shine light on those spaces. I want the people who occupy these paintings to be seen and visible and present. Street casting is to go into the streets and ask complete strangers to look at my art and to become part of it.
Can I show you some examples of my painting?
Old school to new school. Morocco, Nigeria.
Where do I find my models? Beaches, dance halls. I chose places where people play and let loose.
Rain is gonna come, it's gonna fall like gold, 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 gold.
Walking into the dance hall, you hear this music, you smell the weed in the air, you hear this thump and this moan, this desire to be seen and present. But it's also high seriousness. There's a competitive edge that's going on here. So much of formal portraiture has to do with a stark, stoic, fixed sense of power, whereas in dancehall culture, I recognized that it was about movement and fluidity and flow. My process is to shoot my models taking on the poses that were inspired by 18th and 19th century portraiture. Why is it that I choose one person over the other? What is it about an individual that makes them seem appropriate for a type of painting? Is it a type of stance? Is it a pride? Is it a type of presence, a self-assuredness? There's no one real answer, but you know it when you see it. The images are then run through Photoshop. The colors are heightened and diminished. I try out different combinations of backgrounds with different pictures. And then with that image, I begin the painting. This is big painting. This is dramatic painting. This is the type of painting that is about chest beating, that is about bravado. This is at once the language of history and the language of domination that inspires much of the imperialist portraiture that you've seen in the past. But it must, I think, also talk about 21st century life in Jamaica. And what I try to do is to tell a story that is as accurate to the reality that I see on the ground as possible. I'm not trying to tell the whole truth. I think that's impossible. I'm simply trying to give a small glimpse into the world as I see it.